vanachari Yamunatira vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamunatira vanachari Yamunatira vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Ya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamunatira vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamunatira vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hari. Thank you everyone for your kind participation. Before we begin, we'll just chant some invocation. If you can please repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita. We are reading from chapter 6, verse 15. So I'll just recite the Sanskrit, and if anyone feels inspired, they may respond. Yunjaneva sadatmanam yogi niyata manasa shantim nirvana paramam matsam stamadi gacchati. Yunjaneva sadatmanam yogi niyata manasa shanti nirvana paramam matsam stamadi gacchati. Yunjanevam sadatmanam yogi niyata manasa shantim nirvana paramam matsam stamadi gacchati. Yunjanevam sadatmanam yogi niyata manasa shantim nirvana paramam matsam stamati gacchati. Would anyone like to try? Yunjaneva sadatmanam yogi niyata manasa shantim nirvana paramam matsam stamadi gacchati. Yunjaneva sadatmanam yogi niyata manasa shantim nirvana paramam matsam stamadi gacchati. So reading the word for word. Yunjan, practicing. Evam, as mentioned above. Sada, constantly. Atmanam, body, mind and soul. Yogi, the mystic transcendentalist. Niyata manasa, with a regulated mind. Shantim, peace. Nirvana, paramam, cessation of material existence. Mat samstam, the spiritual sky, the kingdom of God. Adhigachati, does attain. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Translation. Thus, practicing constant control of the body, mind, and activities, the mystic transcendentalist, his mind regulated, attains the kingdom of God, or the abode of Krishna, by cessation of material existence. Purport. The ultimate goal in practicing yoga is now clearly explained. Yoga practice is not meant for attaining any kind of material facility. It is to enable the cessation of all material existence. One who seeks an improvement in health or aspires after material perfection is no yogi according to Bhagavad Gita. Nor does cessation of material existence entail one's entering into, in speech marks, the void, which is only a myth. There is no void anywhere within the creation of the Lord. Rather, the cessation of material existence enables one to enter into the spiritual sky, the abode of the Lord. The abode of the Lord is also clearly described in the Bhagavad Gita as that place where there is no need of sun, moon, or electricity. All the planets in the spiritual kingdom are self-illuminated like the sun in the material sky. The kingdom of God is everywhere, but the spiritual sky and the planets thereof are called Param Dhamma, or superior abodes. A consummate yogi who is perfect in understanding Lord Krishna, as is clearly stated herein by the Lord himself, Mat Chitta, Mat Para, Mat Sthanam, can attain real peace and can ultimately reach his supreme abode Krishna Lok, known as Goloka Vrindavan. In Brahma Samhita, chapter 5, text 37, it is clearly stated, Goloka eva nivasatya kilatma bhuta. The Lord, although residing always in his abode called Goloka, is the all-pervading Brahman and the localized Paramatma, as well by dint of his superior spiritual energies. No one can reach the spiritual sky, Vaikuntha, or enter into the Lord's eternal abode, Golok Vrindavan, without the proper understanding of Krishna and his plenary expansion Vishnu. Therefore, a person working in Krishna consciousness is the perfect yogi, because his mind is always absorbed in Krishna's activities. Savai manaha Krishna padaravindayo. In the Vedas also, Shvetashvatara Upanishad 3.8, we learn Tam eva viditvati mrityum eti. One can overcome the path of birth and death only by understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. In other words, perfection of the yoga system is the attainment of freedom from material existence and not some magical jugglery or gymnastic feats to befool innocent people. So before we begin, we'll just chant some invocation prayers just to invoke some auspiciousness. Don't worry, it's nothing suspicious. If you know the prayers, you can chant along with me. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगण ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तु ते। तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वञ्चाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। So firstly, I would like to humbly request the blessings of all the Vaishnavas assembled here, many of whom are my senior. Please bestow upon your blessings so that I may be able to speak something of value, something according to Prabhupada's purports. So to do anything productively as a group of people, it requires some cooperation. In a business, there may be many departments. There may be a sales department, there may be a administrative department. I don't know much about business, so I got it on my notes. There's a finance department, there's a management department, there's a HR department, there's an operations department, there's a marketing department. There's so many different departments. And each department, in order for the company to work productively, to reach its goal and target, must work in cooperation. Each department must work in cooperation with the other department. If the sales department or the HR department try to work independently of the entire organization, then they will not ultimately reach their objective and goal. And it rather seems ludicrous to even entertain such obnoxious idea. And so in such an organization, there must be some cooperation. Now, for the cooperation to work in synergy to achieve a common goal, there must be some sort of organization within the organization. Henceforth, it's called a organization. There must be some organization in a business, And such organization can be governed by a natural leader. A leader can be one who tells which department how they should run, how they can work together, what are their objectives, what are their goals that each department has to fulfill in the view of obtaining the business's targets and goals. And so in that example, the leader could be, for example, the CEO, Chief Executive Officer. So in that way, there are many different bodies within a company, many different entities, departments, and they are all governed by one leader. Now, if each department tries to work independently and does what it wants, it may not reach the goal. If the HR department or a person working in HR tries to perform the actions of those in the marketing department, in the sales department, in the administrative department, they will struggle because they're trying to do so many different things at the same time. Now, the point I'm trying to make is that there must be some level of restraint or control. Because if someone in a different department has the urge or is incentivized somehow or other to work in a different department, if someone from the HR department suddenly wants to try doing what the sales guy does, then it may not be in the best interests of the business. And that's where the CEO comes in place, because the CEO will tell each department that this is your objective and duty, and each person within the department will stick to their roles and duties. In the same way, when our senses try to act independently of their natural leader, then it wreaks havoc in our lives. And the senses are like different departments in an organization. And our mind is like the CEO. In the Bhagavad Gita is described a natural hierarchy. And before I explain this hierarchy, I just want to elaborate on this example of comparing ourselves with an organization or a company. The company has many departments, and so we also have many different departments. Now, if we look at our body, there's different ways we can analyze this. The first is our gross body, the matter it is made of. Within this matter, we can divide the body into 5 main departments. And those departments can be compared to as the senses: eyes, ears, tongue, nose, mouth, touch, hearing. 5 main senses. I think I said more than 5, but I think some of them overlapped. But I think you are all sufficiently well educated to know the 5. So, these 5 senses comprise of the gross body. Further than that is the subtle body. The subtle body comprises of the mind, intelligence, and false ego. Now in the Bhagavad Gita is described, Indriyani paranyahur indriyebhyo param mana manasastu para buddhir yo buddhe paratastu saha, that the senses are superior to dull matter. Superior than the senses, however, is the mind. Superior to the mind, however, is the intelligence, and superior to the intelligence is the self. And therefore, understanding this verse and understanding our what our body and identity is made of, different layers of identity, understanding the gross body and the subtle body, then one can understand the organizational structure that is there in our body. First you have the senses, then you have the mind, then you have the intelligence. And beyond the intelligence is the self. And therefore the mind is the natural leader of the senses. Now what happens sometimes is that our senses want to do something which is independent. Our senses may get attracted to some object of enjoyment. For example, the ears want to listen to something nice. The tongue wants to taste something nice. The eyes want to look at something nice. Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda ki, Shri Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki. And therefore our senses are naturally attracted to these sense objects. Now, when the mind tells the senses to perform a particular action or behave in a certain way, and the senses deny that, then that can be understood as the senses not acting in accordance of the direction of the natural leader. And this is described as a great impediment in spiritual life. Prahlad Maharaj says in the 7th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Adanta Gobir Vishatam Tamishram, uncontrolled senses is the perfect way to lead one to a hellish life. And why is that so? Because if our senses are uncontrolled, then we will be pulled in many, many different directions. One may argue now, but if my senses are attracting me to a particular thing, then that is my desire. That is what I want to do. That is what I want to do. And by restraining that, you're obstructing my free will. One may make such an argument. However, when we look at the bigger picture, we must first define what is our goal in life. For example, with the business analogy I gave, what is the goal of the CEO? The goal of the CEO is to make money, and for that to happen, all the different departments must work together under the direction of the leader, which is the CEO. And therefore, what is the goal of our life? If the goal of our life is to enjoy the senses, then that is what the senses will do. But why is Prahlad Maharaj saying that uncontrolled senses is a way to lead one to a life of difficulties? Because what the senses feel is good is not always in our ultimate best interest. It may feel good for the time being, but does it have a long-term effect on our general well-being? Our senses, like a practical example, for example, is we may be attracted to eating cheesecake, for example. Now, the tongue likes cheesecake. If I have 10 slices of cheesecake, my tongue may really like it, but my tummy may very much disagree. So if you take it back to the example of the business, if one department is doing really, really well at the cost of another department, then that may not be in the best interest for the entire organization. And therefore, we must somehow or other learn to control our senses. Because when we control our senses, it is not a restriction of freedom, but rather it's a restraint to gain freedom. When our senses are uncontrolled, we are generally being pulled in many different directions. And that being pulled is many times seemingly out of our hand. And therefore, when we get pulled in different directions, we can very easily lose track of or lose sense of where we actually want to go. And therefore, it's very important that we maintain a goal and vision of what we would like to do, what we want to achieve, and what is the purpose of this life. What is the purpose of this life? Then one may ask the question, why is it that my senses are being pulled in different directions? The senses become pulled not only because that the senses are attracted to the objects of enjoyment. It's not just that my tongue wants cheesecake. The other factor to consider also is the mind. Because the mind is the natural leader, is superior than the senses, the mind has the jurisdiction and ability to withhold its subordinates. The mind has the ability to tell the tongue what to do. The mind has the ability to tell the tongue that you've already had 2 cheesecakes. If you have 5 more, you're going to need to go to the bathroom. But sometimes the mind, even though it may say such things, the senses may be so strong that despite repeated warnings, it still goes with its objective. This aspect of controlling the senses is not a restriction that disables freedom. One example can be given. On traffic roads, on the road, when we drive a car, we come across traffic signals. Now, when the light is red, we're to stop the car and not go further. Someone may argue that you're restricting my free will because I want to go further and reach my destination in my vehicle. But this red light is telling me to stop, and therefore it's a restriction on my freedom. Someone may make the point. But when we look at the wider perspective, then we can understand that actually this red light is for my well-being. Because if I was to continue going despite the red light, then even though I may call it my so-called freedom, I may get hit by another car who's coming, and his light is green. So he's going, and he may just hit my car, and he may damage my car, and there may be injuries also. And so in the same way, controlling our senses doesn't mean that it's a restriction on my freedom. Rather, it actually gives us freedom because it helps us to achieve the goal of human life. The goal of human life is not necessarily fleeting temporary pleasures because they come and go. The goal of human life, as is described here, is the cessation of material existence and attaining the kingdom of God. This is a place where there is no material suffering. Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita there's 4 major types of suffering: birth, death, old age, and disease. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi. And if we have this goal in our mind, then with that goal we can attempt to control the senses. And this is really the goal of yoga. Yoga is not necessarily meant for practicing postures for good health or other material benefits. That may be there, but that is not the goal of yoga according to the Bhagavad Gita. The goal of yoga is to terminate our material difficulties, our material struggles. And this yoga, Krishna later on describes what is the best kind of yoga. He describes yoginam api sarvesham matgate nantaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yukta tamo mataha. Krishna describes, and of all yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself and renders transcendental loving service to me, he is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. So Krishna is saying that the real purpose of yoga is to attain him. That is the purpose of yoga. And here yoga is mentioned that by this yoga practice, one must control the mind, body, and activities. And therefore this yoga process is also meant for this goal, and within that practice of yoga comes the controlling of senses. So trying to practice yoga without trying to control the senses is in itself somewhat futile. Controlling the senses is actually the first business of a spiritualist. Anyone interested in spiritual life, or anyone rather interested in becoming free from many different sufferings we have in this material world, the first business is to control the senses. In a book called Upadeshamrita, authored by Rupa Goswami and wonderfully translated and elaborated on by Srila Prabhupada, called the Nectar of Instruction, the first verse Rupa Goswami mentions, Vacho vegam manasakrodha vegam jiva vegam udarapastha vegam etan vegan yo vishahet dhira sarvam apimam prithivim sashishyat. Rupa Goswami describes that a sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals, is qualified to make disciples all over the world. And therefore, this describes that we must learn to control these things. We must learn to resist these temptations. So I think I will end here. If there's any questions or comments or anything anyone would like to share.
I have a question. Thank you for your amazing class. Then what do you suggest was the best thing, how to control the senses? What do you suggest?
Yeah.
So that someone want to practice spiritual life,
Yeah.
Krishna consciousness. What do you suggest?
The senses are naturally attracted to sense objects. To curtail such attraction prematurely will result in simply frustration. It's like someone going to the gym first time and trying to bench 100 kilos. So rather, it's easier to work our way. The best way to do this is to dovetail. And actually, this is not just the means, but this is really the goal also. By dovetailing, we can actually control our senses. We may want to taste nice food. That's fine. But if we offer the food to Krishna, it becomes spiritualized. And by doing so, we are able to actually control our senses. This is actually also really practical. Because if I get a sudden surge or desire to eat, for example, some dish, if I get a sudden urge to eat some dish, instead of immediately cooking and eating, after cooking it, one should offer it to Krishna. Offering it to Krishna means that one should set up a plate, one should get an altar, one should recite some mantras. And therefore, by offering such prayers to Krishna, helps us to understand that this is not just for my tongue's pleasure. There is more to it than just my tongue's pleasure. And as we grow spiritually, we can understand that this is for the pleasure of Krishna. I'm offering this food to Krishna. Even on like a practical level, it takes like 10-15 minutes to do so. And so while contemplating that, one can even rethink how much do they actually require this, or is it just a temptation they're giving into? It gives an opportunity to reconsider whether we're giving into temptation or not. Because we cannot give up eating, for example. We cannot give it up, because how will you live? Krishna says, Annad bhavati bhutani, all living beings subsist on food grains. Prabhupada describes the nectar of instruction in the first verse that in controlling the senses, we should take the prasadam of the Lord. But if one is taking prasadam just for the satisfaction of the senses, that means that one is giving in to the urges of the tongue. Therefore, sometimes when there's mahaprasadam and there's paneer sabji, I take a whole plateful. But if there's Karela, I take 1 spoon and that's enough, Prabhuji, thank you. So then the question comes, was I really hungry? Because if I was hungry, I would have taken a full plate of Karela, which is very bitter. So even introspecting can help us understand if we are giving in to temptation or not. Now, of course, temptation brings temporary satisfaction, temporary kind of, like it's like a stimulus. To understand that this may be nice, but it may not be in my ultimate welfare. To have a bigger picture in mind, to understand and perform activities with that ultimate goal in mind, requires a higher taste. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna mentions Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. He mentions that in order to give up things of a lower nature, we must get a higher taste. And that higher taste lies in Krishna. The embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment. Though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense objects remain. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. Like for example, when young children play, they enjoy playing so much they forget to eat. In the same way, when one is absorbed in spiritual activities, one may forget to eat. Like the six Goswamis of Vrindavan, they were so absorbed in chanting the holy name of Krishna, glorifying Krishna, and experiencing Krishna that they would sometimes forget to eat. So then comes the question that, how do I get a higher taste? The nectar of instruction further describes, Syat Krishna nama charitadi sitapya vidya pitto patapta rasanasya narochikanu kintvādarad anudinam kalu saiva jushta svadvikramad bhavati tadgadamula hantri. Describes that chanting the holy name, fame, characteristics, pastimes, etc. of Krishna is sweet like sugar candy. It's completely sweet. It's relishable. But because at our current state, we cannot taste it. We cannot taste it at the moment because our current state is that of, or that which can be compared to, jaundice. Jaundice is like an illness where when you take sweet things, you still don't find it sweet, you find it bitter. And therefore, at our current state, we find it very bitter. We find it very bitter, we find it difficult, we find, okay, when is it going to be over? But by carefully and every day performing these activities, like chanting Krishna's name, fame, pastimes, glories, one can gradually be free from such illness. That illness is described as material contamination. And gradually, the root cause of that disease is driven away. Therefore, the best thing to do is to chant Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So thank you everyone for your kind attention. There will now be Gaura Arti. We will be singing. The curtains will open shortly in 2 minutes. So we encourage everyone to participate, sing along, dance, clap. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Kiba Jaya Jaya Gauran Chande Aroti Ke Sobha Kiba Jaya Jaya Gauran Chande Aroti Ke Sobha Tatavani Jagamanalobha Janavi Tatavani Jagamanalobha Jake Nitai Chan Vamegadadara Jake Nitai Chan Vamegadadara Itatke Advaitasini Vasa Tatadara Itatke Advaitasini Vasa Tatadara Vase Ache Gaurancan Ratna Simasane Vase Ache Gaurancan Ratna Simasane Aroti Korenga Brahma Adi Devagane Aroti Korenga Brahma Adi Devagane Narari Adi Kori Kamala Dulaya Narari Adi Kori Kamala Dulaya Sanjaya Mukunda Vasu Gosadigaya Sanjaya Mukunda Vasu Gosadigaya Santa Baji Ganta Baji Baji Karatala Santa Baji Ganta Baji Baji Karatala Madhura Mridanga Bhaje Paramarasala Madhura Mridanga Bhaje Paramarasala Bahu Koti Chandra Jini Vadana Ujwala Bahu Koti Chandra Jini Vadana Ujwala Kala Dese Vana Mala Kore Jalamala Kala Dese Vana Mala Kore Jalamala Shiva Sukha Narada Preme Gada Gada Shiva Sukha Narada Preme Gada Gada Bhakti Vinoda Dekhe Gaurara Sampada Bhakti Vinoda Dekhe Gaurara Sampada Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutala Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityananda